First of all, the good thing, as you rightly said, that SIP has become a beautiful product. The entire ecosystem from regulator, manufacturer, investors has become very mature. And to that extent, the time frame, mind frame actually is very longer term, 5 year, 10 years sort of SIP is the duration. But yeah, there is always a tendency to read the media noise and sort of take a call in terms of timing the market कि higher level पे sell करके stop करके and low level पे आएंगे. ELSs had this additional sort of benefit, as you rightly said, of section 80C. You get a benefit up to 1,50,000. So that would go only if the taxpayer move to the new regime. I think so. The key learning from an investor point of view is that uncertainties are always a great environment for long-term investing. So uncertainty, which is could be because of macro related, could be company or stock specific, one should not get disturbed and should sort of get commit, because what happens is you get same businesses at lower sort of valuation. That's the sort of one learning. जो बोल रहे हैं कि जो एवरेज इन्वेस्टर है उनको लगता है 10 रुपए में यूनिट मिल रही है तो ऐसा लगता है कि सस्ता है, बट द फैक्ट रिमेन्स इट इज एट पार विद एनी म्यूचुअल ओपन एंडेड म्यूचुअल फंड which has an NAV of say 100, 200, 500,000. It is same as 10. So number one, that is there is no advantage on that front. So that education by distributor channel partner is always done, that it is absolutely same as an existing sort of scheme.
हेलो एवरीवन, मेरा नाम नम्रता अरोरा है एंड वेलकम बैक टू म्यूचुअल फंड्स की बात। जैसे आप सब जानते हैं कि म्यूचुअल फंड्स की बात में हम इंडियन और ग्लोबल इकोनॉमिक कंडीशंस, कमोडिटीज, स्टॉक मार्केट, म्यूचुअल फंड्स के बारे में बात करते हैं और हर एपिसोड में वी ट्राई गेटिंग समवन रियली स्पेशल, समवन विद अ लॉट ऑफ एक्सपीरियंस इन द म्यूचुअल फंड इंडस्ट्री। तो आज भी हमारे साथ वी हैव विद अस अ वेरी रिनाउंड पर्सनालिटी, मिस्टर नीलेश सुराना। सो मिस्टर नीलेश सुराना जो है, ही इज अ चीफ इन्वेस्टमेंट ऑफिसर फॉर इक्विटीज at Mire Asset Investment Managers India Private Limited. Mr. Neelesh Surana joined Mire Asset in 2008, and in his capacity as the CIO, Neelesh spearheads the research and fund management functions. उन्होंने Mire Asset ज्वाइन किया था after 5 years with ASK Investment Managers, जहां वो senior portfolio manager थे and was responsible for management of Indian and international portfolios. Before this, he worked with INFS Investmart Limited in the institutional equity team. वो एक engineering graduate है with an MBA in finance, and he has over 26 years of experience in equity research and portfolio management. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Mutual Funds Ki Baat. Today we have with us Mr. Neelesh Surana. So Neelesh, hi, welcome to Mutual Funds Ki Baat, and let's get started with the questions. तो नीलेश, अगर हम देखें तो इन्फ्लेशन नंबर जो है वो अब नीचे आ रहा है. वी ऑल्सो हैव अ फेयर इंडिकेशन कि जो इंटरेस्ट रेट्स हैं दे आर नॉट गोइंग टू गो अप फर्दर, एंड लोग एक्सपेक्ट कर रहे हैं कि जो यूएस रेट कट्स हैं टुवर्ड्स द एंड ऑफ 2023 होंगे. So are these things positive, and which are the areas where you think we should be worried about? So basically the question is, how do you see the global backdrop, and what are your views on medium term economy trends and basically on the earnings?
Yeah, thanks, Namrata, for inviting me. It's our pleasure to interact. एंड जैसा आपने बताया कि ग्लोबल बैकड्रॉप लास्ट ईयर जो हम देखेंगे 2022 में वन मेजर इवेंट टुक प्लेस which I would say a bit of regime change in interest rates. The period of lower interest rates because of increase in inflation got changed, and also central banks have been doing quantitative tightening. And in that context, it's essentially a global phenomena, because of which most emerging market economies have been impacted. I mean, there has been emerging market economies, including India, have been facing a sort of sharp trade-off between supporting the economic activity and controlling inflation, and also preserving the policy sort of credibility. आपने जो शुरू में बोला कि in terms of the peaking up of interest rate and inflation, I think that assumption is broadly true, at least in India. And even globally, it's very difficult, it's more complicated subject to pinpoint the time frame, but we would see inflation sort of peaking during the course of the current calendar year. And that would at some point in time prompt the Fed to sort of pause. But what is important is from India perspective, our drivers of inflations are very different. And to that extent, I think for us, there will be receding of the inflation because of stability and lower sort of commodity prices compared to the peak we have seen last year. and that would mean that the probability of incremental rate hike from here on is restricted. So our view is that sort of worst of inflation in India is sort of over, and to that extent, interest rate should sort of stabilize, and no significant rate hike would sort of take place. That would mean, to your second part of the question, that it would mean in terms of how the progress would be in terms of the economy despite the increase in interest rates globally. I think India, from a medium term perspective, is very well positioned. And if you see even the current high frequency data, the broader data, whether it is GST, e-way bill, personal credit, industrial credit, rail freight, all have been doing well despite soft patches. Let's say rural is a bit soft, or MSME has not sort of recovered. The reason I think why the near-term drivers for the recovery or upturn in the economy are intact is because of few factors, that many of the pockets, larger segments, are yet to mean revert. So if I have to just call out five, six areas where things are looking have not reached the overall potential, it's first is related to the manufacturing opportunities, then the housing sales reversal, which we have seen that is sort of happening. Autos, which is a large base, large sector within existing manufacturing, is having a very favorable sort of base, particularly let's say in case of two-wheelers. And talking about two-wheelers, rural, we think that over the course of next year should see recovery. Rural will see recovery because of back-to-back good monsoon, because of government thrust, because of coming back of construction job. Because rural is क्या होता है is not exactly agriculture. It's also to do with the entire sort of construction workers will go to the cities areas, etc. So I think rural recovery on low base would happen. And lastly, the corporate balance sheet is very strong. Our corporate balance sheet, be it both of lenders as well as जो corporate India का debt equity ratio है, that has come down by 30% in terms of the reduction in debt equity over the last 5-6 years. तो जब balance sheet strength रहती है तो ability to handle the headwinds, in this case global softness, recession, higher interest rate, is much better. So all in all, I think because of these factors, economy upturn would sort of continue. And from equity market perspective, all these should translate into a healthy earnings growth, and that's the reason our view on equities is constructive.
Nice. So basically, we see a lot of positive signs, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
ओके नीलेश, अगर हम पिछले 3 या 4 साल की बात करें तो इंडियन मार्केट्स हैड फार सुपीरियर अर्निंग्स, बट अब अगर हम देख रहे हैं कि अदर इमर्जिंग मार्केट्स आर आल्सो दे कैचिंग अप. सो डज दिस मीन कि जो ग्लोबल इन्वेस्टर्स होते हैं दे विल स्टार्ट लुकिंग एट अदर मार्केट्स, और will Indian long-term equity story still be intact? What do you think?
No, from a longer term perspective, definitely Indian economy and the view and the growth prospects are intact, and in fact they sort of strengthened. जो relative basis पे हम देखेंगे compared to other markets over the next decade or so, our growth is very strong. IMF का भी forecast देखेंगे for next 5 years, our growth is among the highest. What I think जो आप refer कर रहे हैं कि why foreigners are selling, I think it's probably to do with what happened last year, where India market did relatively well, and in the process some other emerging markets became much more cheaper.
Yes.
So FIIs sold for two reasons. One is what happened in US in terms of increase in interest rates, and secondly they were reallocating from relatively expensive market from a near-term viewpoint from India to other markets. So what we saw in calendar year last year, 2022, that FII sold $17 billion, and domestic investors through mutual fund, they bought $23 billion, around that.
Okay.
And even at the start of this calendar year, 2023, I mean, the selling has been about $3 billion, and buying by for domestic has been, it's almost equal, $3 to $4 billion. So I think this is more a near-term impact, and as things sort of settle, I think flows will come, and flows also need to be seen in the context that what we have seen last year कि जो US dollar was काफ़ी ज़्यादा strengthen हो गया था. So now we are seeing it sort of stabilizing at lower level. That means that emerging market flows will revive. So once emerging market flows sort of revive, then the need to sell India to buy other markets, let's say China or any other market, would not sort of happen. So
Sure.
I think longer term story remains sort of intact. Near to medium term, this trend is been sort of taking place, which is more driven by flows rather than the narrative or the outlook on India.
Okay, okay, perfect, very nice. Okay, so Neelesh, अगर हम if we talk about the Indian market, Indian equity markets, they have been posting positive returns for the last 7 years. It was of course coupled with fixed deposit rates going down. और कोविड के टाइम में हमने देखा कि डिपॉजिट रेट्स went down to as low as 5% for a 1 year tenor. And obviously उसकी वजह से investors looked beyond fixed deposits and equity was a very obvious choice at that point in time. लेकिन अब अगर हम देखें तो इंटरेस्ट रेट्स दोबारा बढ़ रहे हैं, एफडीज आर अगेन बिकमिंग अट्रैक्टिव. सो डू यू थिंक जो इन्वेस्टर्स हैं दे विल इग्नोर देयर एसआईपीज इन फेवर ऑफ बैंक डिपॉजिट्स?
So I think, this is, I mean, not a single answer for all set of investors because it depends on their time frame, mind frame, and all. But you are right that choice of fixed income was not there a couple of years back, and that has become an attractive market. So to that extent, it is attractive in the sense you are getting much better sort of yield interest rates today, both on accrual as well as duration sort of products. So I think that do not necessarily mean that it should come at the expense of equity. See, हम लोग equities में हमेशा बोलते हैं and that one should have a asset allocation. Asset allocation is very important. Whatever money which you don't need from for the next 3 5 years and which is for longer term wealth creation should be set aside to equities. The increase in interest rates should not necessarily change that component of wealth which one should set aside for longer term 5 10 20 year viewpoint. But yeah, momentarily the other piece has become interesting. So to that extent, there is more choice available on the fixed income case. But I don't think it is at the expense of equities. And investors who are committed through SIP should sort of continue that, because at the end of the day, even if you look at it over the last many years, whether it is last 10 years, 15 years, or maybe the index was 42 years back, it's gone 600 times in 42 years, which is basically 14 15% returns. What we have seen that equities give superior risk adjusted return adjusted for volatility. So it's not a compensation of fixed income, but it's just that the fixed income has become relatively more attractive. Yeah,
Yeah, but I guess to some extent थोड़ा बहुत तो असर होना ही चाहिए, because when your
absolutely.
fixed income component becomes more attractive, जो आपके less risky investments become more attractive, तो थोड़े जो equities पे impact पड़ेगा, but like you're rightly saying, maybe not to an extent that we are anticipating.
Absolutely. I mean, from an immediate term perspective, that asset class has also become very interesting. But
Very
at a broader
interesting.
picture, what I would say is that the exposure to equities is much lower. There is a long way to go. It's not that we are over invested in equities.
Yeah.
So to that extent, these consolidation period could happen. Yeah.
Sure. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think we have a long way to go to really get a bigger number of investors into the equity market, which is so true. Okay. So I think just continuing with the SIP conversation, SIPs, I think, are one of the most beautifully marketed products in India, right? Especially in the recent past. एंड बहुत सारे लोग जो हैं दे इन्वेस्ट इन इक्विटी फंड्स थ्रू एसआईपीज, क्योंकि ऑब्वियसली उनको रुपी कॉस्ट एवरेजिंग का बेनिफिट मिलता है. और जब भी स्टॉक मार्केट करेक्शंस होते हैं, दैट्स वाइटल फॉर लॉन्ग टर्म वेल्थ क्रिएशन. लेकिन फिर भी जब स्टॉक मार्केट ऊपर जाती है, काफ़ी लोग बिलीव करते हैं कि दे शुड डिसकंटिन्यू देयर एसआईपीज, एंड दैट वुड बी अ बेटर ऑप्शन इन दी होप कि वो तब इन्वेस्ट करेंगे जब मार्केट्स नीचे आएंगी. इन
जी.
योर ओपिनियन, डू यू थिंक दिस इज अ गुड अप्रोच?
नहीं, see, देखिए, first of all, the good thing, as you rightly said, that SIP has become a beautiful product. The entire ecosystem from regulator, manufacturer, investors has become very matured. And to that extent, the time frame, mind frame actually is very longer term, 5 year, 10 years sort of SIP is the duration. But yeah, there is always a tendency to read the media noise and sort of take a call in terms of timing the market कि हायर लेवल पे सेल करके स्टॉप करके एंड लो लेवल पे आएंगे. बट इन आर ओपिनियन ओवर टाइम दैट इज़ नॉट पॉसिबल कंसिस्टेंटली. And there are various periods you can look at it, various disruption. It's very difficult. For example, in COVID, it will be very difficult when to stop it, when to restart it and stuff. And that said, the beauty of SIP, as you rightly said, is the averaging over time. That is one.
Yeah.
And more importantly, it's the mind frame, time frame, which is Absolutely, their first requirement for equities. Equity asks for only one thing, which is a longer term commitment, because as the businesses grow, wealth would sort of increase, but they are not linear. So I don't think so. Starting and stopping the SIP should be done by an average investor. Sophisticated investors, in terms of lump sum, can attempt to do that, but that also, I would say, is very difficult to do it consistently. Timing the market on a near term basis is literally sort of impossible. One can do it right once or twice, but not every time. Yeah,
We say कि ideally markets को time नहीं करना चाहिए, and SIP is a beautiful tool to not
absolutely.
time the market.
जी,
लेकिन अगर आप SIPs में ही time करने लगेंगे, then the whole purpose is lost, right?
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So I think coming back to the whole interest rate conversation, where we said कि interest rates obviously ऊपर जा रहे हैं, debt funds are getting attractive again. और अगर हम even if you look at funds like overnight funds and liquid funds, which are generating returns upwards of 6%, और उसी टाइम में अगर हम देखें तो डेट फंड्स कैरी इंटरेस्ट रेट रिस्क, जिसको विच इज नथिंग बट द मार्केट रिस्क, राइट, विच कैरीज वॉलिटिलिटी. तो अगर हम देखें तो बहुत सारे जो म्यूचुअल फंड्स हैं, दे आर लॉन्चिंग एफ एम पीज, फिक्स मेच्योरिटी प्लान्स. सो वट एग्जैक्टली आर एफ एम पीज, कैन यू टेल अस दैट, एंड इज दिस अ गुड ऑप्शन फॉर इन्वेस्टर्स जिनको डेट फंड्स में इन्वेस्ट करना है, एंड डू दे स्टिल कैरी द रिस्क if I were to invest and hold them till maturity?
Sure. No, so Namrata, the first thing is investors should set aside how much money he's committing for equities and how much is for fixed income. And that is very important. That is based on the needs, requirement, time frame, mind frame, and also the function of interest rate, not
Yeah.
necessarily only interest rates. Having decided that this is the fixed portion, this is the component in the fixed income instrument, then there are various choices available. You have choice of bank fixed deposit, you have the saving schemes by the government, whether it is PPF and national sort of certificates and others. And then of course you have mutual funds. Within that you have duration products, you have accrual products, and FMP is one of the product where you know the time period that it is for a particular duration, and you know the yield which will happen over that period of time. So it is
Yeah.
the everything is known in terms of, as I said, it's akin to a fixed income in the sense you get a yield better than bank deposits, डिपेंडिंग ऑन द अंडरलाइंग पेपर. अंडरलाइंग पेपर में दो होते हैं, या तो आप क्रेडिट रिस्क ले रहे हैं, क्रेडिट रिस्क नहीं ले रहे हैं. बट द ब्रॉड थिंग इज, मोस्ट इंपॉर्टेंट थिंग इज द asset allocation, and within that investors, and there are many more sort of advisor to help choose what products you can sort of choose in. FMP is generally popular for those who want slightly higher yield, and they know that that portion of money is not to be, it's locked in for a particular duration, and they know the yield for that. So it's one of the instruments. Because of the increase in interest rates, all the buckets of fixed income has also become much more interesting than what it was, say, 18 months back.
No, absolutely, yeah. FMP is definitely one of those products which. So, can you just tell us a little bit about FMPs? Like, my first question was, what are FMPs? So for the benefit of our investors.
So as the name
Yes.
suggests, it's fixed maturity plan. So you have a duration which is known, and you will get an idea about the yield which you will get based on the underlying papers जिसमें आप invest करते हैं. जो underlying papers होते हैं वो can have credit risk, can have no credit risk, depending on whether it is government securities, government sort of institution, or it is to corporates. But the simple form of FMP is, you know, the duration, whether it is
Yeah.
for 3 year, and you get the taxation sort of benefit if it is for more than 3 years, and
Okay.
you know the tentative yield which the paper would sort of which the instrument will sort of generate. So it is, and if you hold it through the entire sort of duration, then you know the yield, you know the sort of risk which you are sort of taking, and there is no anxiety in terms of investing in a mutual fund where you are taking duration risk, that if interest rates increase more, then there can be capital loss or gain momentarily. That issue is not there.
Okay. Perfect. I think that helps. Yes. Okay. अब अगर हम बात करें, देयर आर लॉट ऑफ पीपल हु मेक, जब टैक्स सेविंग की बात आती है तो लास्ट मिनट ईएलएसएस फंड्स में अपना पैसा डाल देते हैं, राइट. दैट्स अ एक कॉमन ट्रेंड वी हैव सीन कि सडनली मार्च एंड में दे रियलाइज कि हमने अपना टैक्स सेविंग नहीं किया है, चलो जो बचा है वो ईएलएसएस फंड्स में डाल दें. लेकिन अब अगर हम इस यूनियन बजट का इंक्लिनेशन देखें, विच इज ऑब्वियसली टुवर्ड्स द न्यू टैक्स रेजीम, विच कुड जिसकी वजह से इन्वेस्टर का जो ईएलएसएस फंड्स में इंटरेस्ट है वो कम हो सकता है. So, what is your advice to such investors who are looking to exit from their money from ELSS funds? या फिर ELSS funds को देखने का कोई दूसरा perspective है apart from tax benefit?
No, so ELSs had this additional sort of benefit, as you rightly said, of Section 80C, you get a benefit up to 1,50,000. That. So that would go only if the taxpayer moved to the new regime. So one is like those who are in the old regime for whatever other consideration, it continues. And that is, it has a beauty of compounding of wealth through equity investment. Second, also you get the additional sort of benefit. But of course, you are right. Those who are moving to the new regime, this benefit will not be there. That apart, one coincident benefit of of ELSS is that when we always say that in equities you come with minimum 3 year time frame. Here, because of lock-in, that time frame has been set aside. So, जैसा आप बोल रहे हैं कि people make choice without knowing it, and the good thing is their mind frame is locked for 3 years.
Correct.
Beyond that, ELSS is just like any other diversified equity sort of plan. And it's not necessary. We have seen many cohorts of investors where 3 year lock in is over, they are happy with the returns, they are happy with the wealth creation. For them, it is one of the instruments to create wealth over a longer period of time, and they just continue with that. And many investors are also investing in tax saving products, ELSS funds, subject to other metrics, whether they like the fund house, fund manager, investment philosophy, and to that extent, they invest more than what is required available in ATC. But yeah, I mean, certain cohorts, those who move to the new regime and they are planning only for tax purpose, for them it will become less relevant.
या आई रिमेम्बर पहले हम ये डिस्कस किया करते थे कि लोग 3 साल के बाद ELSS फंड्स में से अपना पैसा निकाल लेते हैं. हाउ डू वी इनकरेज देम नॉट टू डू दैट? नाउ वी आर डिस्कसिंग कि क्या ELSS फंड्स में डालना भी चाहिए या नहीं, बिकॉज ऑफ द न्यू टैक्स रेजिम थिंग्स हैव चेंज्ड. यस. Okay, so now we see AMC is coming out with a lot of new funds. So a lot of NFOs that we see, a lot of interesting funds. We have thematic funds, passive funds, ETFs, smart beta funds. So many new funds which are coming out, and I think most people invest in mutual fund NFOs क्योंकि उनका perspective ये है कि NFOs जो है सस्ते होते हैं, हमें 10 रुपए में एक यूनिट मिलती है, right? So that's like the main reason that people run towards NFOs. So, what in your opinion should investors look at जब उनको म्यूचुअल फंड एनएफओ में पैसा डालना होता है? सो फर्स्टली एज अ न्यू इन्वेस्टर क्या मुझे एनएफओ में पैसा डालना चाहिए, और अगर डालना चाहिए तो क्या देखना चाहिए?
जी हाँ. नहीं, सो आप जो बोल रहे हैं कि जो एवरेज इन्वेस्टर है उनको लगता है 10 रुपए में यूनिट मिल रही है तो ऐसा लगता है कि सस्ता है, बट द फैक्ट रिमेन्स it is at par with any mutual open-ended mutual fund which has an NAV of say 100, 200, 500,000. It is same as 10. So number one, that is there is no advantage on that front. That education by distributor channel partner is always done that it is absolutely same as an existing sort of scheme. So to that extent, investors at least should not come from this consideration. He can come from some other consideration. Maybe he like the product, he like the fund manager, or whatever the other sort of consideration. So I think that is very important sort of point. And beyond that, NFO is for the manufacturer to fill gap in the portfolio for his business consideration, etc. For an investor, there are enough and more opportunities. He should compare any existing fund with the NFO, weighs the pros and cons, not because it is coming के 10 रुपए में आ रहा है इसलिए अच्छा है. That myth should be, it's the duty of the advisors and all to say that that is absolutely same, और उसके
Absolutely.
basis पे he should decide or not. To
Yeah.
your question, for an average investor, he should come through NFO? Definitely not. It's not necessarily that he should come only through NFO. He can look at, there are huge number of some sort of scheme. So at the end of the day, NFOs don't have a track record, right? Whereas it is one of the parameters that when you're in new investor, first time investors, you try to look at the scheme, how it has done over the first 3, 5, 10 years and try to sort of make some judgment on that. So large portion of money, sum and substance, should, for a new investor, should not come in NFO in my view.
Yeah, completely with you. I mean, I think क्योंकि ट्रैक रिकॉर्ड नहीं रहता, you wouldn't know कि इसका परफॉर्मेंस आप किसके साथ कंपेयर करेंगे. So I'm completely with you
But
on
that
that.
said,
Yes.
Namrata, that said, there is enough and more advisors, channel partners, etc. They analyze NFO based on certain other parameter. What is the product? What is unique
Yeah.
in that? Is the fund manager already having a track record? The fund may not have, but fund manager may have a track record, or the AMC would have certain track record. But yeah, for, as I said, as a as a general rule, NFOs just because it's coming at 10 rupees should not be the main reason for investing, particularly for new investors.
Yeah. And I think, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think कि अगर आपको लगता है कि कोई एनएफओ बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग है तो अपने सैटेलाइट पोर्टफोलियो का हिस्सा उसको बना सकते हैं. Maybe
और
not
एक
the part
राइट
of
वो
it.
भी होना चाहिए, सॉरी एब्सोल्युटली राइट, एक आई वुड से कि देयर शुड बी, यू शुड पुट सम अमाउंट, you should track the fund for year or two and then build up on that depending on your comfort and how the fund has been performing in terms of risk adjusted return. So no, not necessarily you put a large money. If it is a new concept or if it is a new fund or a fund house or fund manager, you can always put some amount and just sort of track it over a period of time, and based on the merit of the fund sort of performance, risk adjusted performance, you should sort of put in more money. Otherwise, you choose from the plethora of so many schemes already there.
Absolutely, yeah. Perfect. Okay. So I think now let's talk a little bit about the portfolio building strategies. Okay. तो अगर हम देखें तो बहुत सारे जो फर्स्ट टाइम इन्वेस्टर्स होते हैं, they're looking to invest in equity funds. लेकिन I think selecting the right mix of funds is a big challenge for any investor. And I think that's a concern that I've seen for years कि मैं मैं convinced हूँ मुझे equity funds में डालना है, लेकिन मैं कैसे select करूँ, right? And I've seen many first-time investors who are starting their investment journey with, sectoral funds like technology sector funds, yeah, for international funds, and many of them they may not be very happy right now, right? So, in your opinion, how can such investors build, like an all-weather portfolio?
Sure, sure. So first is, as I चले पहले बात करी थी कि एक asset allocation होना चाहिए, उसमें equities में कितना डाल रहे हैं. If you are a first time investors, either you can go through hybrid products जो कि fixed income में भी डालते हैं और equities में भी डालते हैं. So aggressive hybrid will put 2/3 to 3/4 in equities, remaining in fixed income. That is one option. Second is whatever is the equity exposure, just don't look at, while there are various agencies, don't look at near term track record. जो फंड एस्टेब्लिश है जिसका 5-10 साल का ट्रैक रिकॉर्ड है, फॉर फर्स्ट टाइम इन्वेस्टर्स वो शुड पुट दैट एज अ कोर पोर्टफोलियो. द सेकंड पार्ट ऑफ कोर पोर्टफोलियो इन माय व्यू शुड बी इन large cap oriented schemes or multi cap, sort of where that is more than 60-70% in large set of businesses. They are more stable, they have less drawdown, that gives better experience. And by the way, in India even large companies have a lot of growth potential because the economy itself has a lot of potential. So
Yeah,
it's not devoid of growth, and the risk adjusted returns are better. So maybe
yeah,
2/3 to 3/4 should be in those large cap sort of oriented sort of schemes. And as you rightly said, the remaining can be in mid caps, it can be other products. But sectoral fund, thematic funds, international funds should not be the go-to product for initial sort of while you're sort of investing. It can
yeah,
be part of the satellite, not the core sort of portfolio. And also to keep things simple to track, one should not keep on investing in a across all funds at all time point in time, depending on what's happening. कि जैसे आपने बताया मार्च आ गया तो ये एल में डाल दिया, नेक्स्ट मार्च आया तो दूसरे में डाल दिया. आई थिंक वन शुड हैव अ डिसिप्लिन टू इन्वेस्ट, say not more than 8-10 funds and maybe not less than 3-4 funds to diversify the risk. The important
yeah,
thing is, as I mentioned, apart from दो तीन पैरामीटर के, जो भी आप फंड चूज करते हैं उसमें कॉम्प्लीमेंट्री पोर्टफोलियोज होना चाहिए. सो इट्स नॉट इम्पॉर्टेंट दैट सारे लार्ज कैप चूज कर लिए, सारे एक ही एमसी में कर लिए, सारे एक फंड मैनेजर, समथिंग लाइक दैट. सो द diversification of those 5-7 mutual fund which you have in a portfolio is very important. There should be actual diversification rather than just sort of name sort of something. So all these factors go are consideration, and there are a lot of help available in terms of various agencies and which sort of provide guide. They look at various parameters, give ranking of the fund house, fund manager, and they also provide a bespoke sort of portfolio for new sort of investors and all. So a lot of help is available, but I think this should be the guiding principle that yeah.
yeah. So I guess diversification is the key. That's the most important thing.
Right
Yeah.
diversification, yeah, correct.
Yes. Okay. Okay. We also know कि जब म्यूचुअल फंड्स की बात आती है कि past performance doesn't necessarily guarantee future performance, and I think that's something we all agree with. लेकिन फिर भी अगर हम देखें तो लोग जो है पिछले साल के विनर्स या 5 स्टार रेटेड फंड्स को चेज करते हैं, which is why is this a bad approach? And if an investor has already invested in previous year's winners, then should he continue in those funds या उन funds से exit करना चाहिए if those funds are not performing at this point in time? So in a nutshell, how should we select the right mutual fund scheme And what are the parameters that we should consider?
I think 1 year number should not be used. Either it should be minimum 3 years or ideally 5 years. So
5 years,
last
yeah.
5 year rolling return should be seen, and that should be the benchmark. And the portfolio should be reviewed twice a year, or at least give, let's see, once a year should be properly analyzed. But
Yeah.
chasing 1 year return will cause a lot of anxiety because funds do go through some volatility, and that may not be right because not all funds can perform at every point in time. So I think anywhere between 3, ideally 5 years should be used. Rest, what you said is absolutely right. That one should look at risk-adjusted performance on a rolling 5 year basis, and that is one part in terms of the past performance. And then of course there are various experts and agencies which look at other nuances in terms of portfolio construction, drawdown, and how much is the diversification within the portfolio. All that parameters should be used. But purely from a time perspective, one should not chase 1 year best performing or worst, or one should not get perturbed, disturbed कि भाई एक साल परफॉर्म नहीं किया तो उसको बेचना ही चाहिए. Yeah,
Okay. मतलब 3 से 5 साल का परफॉर्मेंस देखना
absolutely,
is important.
absolutely.
Okay, okay, perfect. So, we were talking about hybrid funds, and you said कि जो first time investors होते हैं, they could probably start their investment journey with hybrid funds. So, जब हम hybrid funds की बात करते हैं, so what purpose do they serve when an investor can look at equity funds and debt funds for their portfolio individually, right? And are these hybrid funds tax efficient?
No, so hybrid में भी दो तीन बड़े buckets हैं. Any hybrid which has more than 65% investment in equities, they are treated like an equity fund. So they are tax efficient in that context. And this
Yeah,
is basically referring to a category called aggressive hybrid, जहाँ 65% plus equities में रहता है.
minimum,
Then
yeah.
there is a second bucket which is balance advantage, which is not 65% necessarily, but it's more like 50-55%. Although they can go up to 65. That is the second large category. And then there is a third, which is more conservative sort of category, ASF बोलते हैं, equity savings fund, where the equity exposure is reverse. It's more like 35 around sort of percent, which is treated as a fixed income sort of product. Your
Yeah.
question about why hybrid is, one is volatility is less. Second, hybrid का एक basic advantage ये है कि suppose a fund manager is want to keep 70% return and markets are down 10%, then all else being equal, that 70 will become say 63 or 65 because of the drawdown. So he will buy and realign it to 50, 70, for example, in this case 70, by buying more when the markets are low, and vice versa. So it gives some amount of balancing that when markets are down, your equity exposure is maintained. That means you buy more, and reverse is true in terms of when the markets are up. So it keeps that basic discipline of
Yeah.
equities to buy low and to book profits if required, if it is sort of high. That is one. And on an aggregate basis, you get a better experience because drawdown is less, just because it's a combination of these two products. So for first time investors or those who are more careful in terms of the volatility, then the volatility is less. And the second category which I mentioned, the balance advantage fund, which is a very large category now, it is left to it is the fund manager who decides the allocation. In all the category it is decided, but in balance advantage the range is quite significant, and they use a particular methodology which is independent of that fund house, where again the premise is simple, that if the markets are down and equities are cheaper, then you increase equity allocation, and vice versa. So to that extent, I think, as I said, the advantage of hybrid is essentially lower volatility compared to a typical sort of diversified, fully invested equity fund.
Okay. But let's assume कि मैं first time investor हूँ, मुझे एक hybrid fund चुनना है. So should I pick an aggressive hybrid fund or a balanced advantage fund? Which one would be better for me as an investor?
So if tax be the consideration, and then I think aggressive hybrid
Aggressive
is
hybrid.
the name aggressive. One should not get disturbed on the sense, because aggressive doesn't mean that it will have 80% exposure. Generally, the exposure is two-third, one-third, or two-third to three-fourth in sort of equities,
Yeah.
which is better in the sense the longer term premise is equities will do better than fixed income. At the
Okay.
same time, you have advantage of capitalizing on volatility, and and you don't miss out in terms of the larger wealth creation which will happen more in equities or fixed income in the longer period of time.
Okay. Okay. Great. So, Nilesh, can you tell us a little bit about your investment journey in equity markets, and you know, what are some of the learnings that you would want to pass on to us कि हम वो गलतियां ना करें जो शायद और लोग करते हैं?
No, I mean, see, we are completing 15 years in Mire Asset, and I think in terms of learning, I can say that see, last 15 years we have seen multiple black swan sort of unprecedented event. I mean, starting
Absolutely.
from global financial crisis, then we had eurozone crisis, oil crisis. We have events like demonetization, pandemic, and GST rollout. A lot of things that happened. But what we have seen is this: despite all the events, the NAVs of most well-managed funds have created huge sort of wealth. I mean, the returns have been low teens for most of the funds. I think so. The key learning from an investor point of view is that that uncertainties are always a great environment for long-term investing. So uncertainty, which is could be because of macro related, could be company or stock specific, one should not get disturbed and should sort of get commit, because what happens is you get same businesses at lower sort of valuation. That's the sort of one learning. The other aspect is, as I had mentioned, in terms of diversification within across mutual funds, or whenever you are looking at a fund, to look at a fund where the important aspect should be the portfolio should be very well diversified and well constructed. So portfolio should be well constructed so that it can happen mistakes also, which can happen because of external assumptions or internal wrong assumptions. And the overall returns should risk adjusted return should be sort of superior. I think that I would say is the sort of second sort of learning which we have one can sort of while investing observe. And lastly, those who invest directly in equities, I think the learnings are more stock specific, where you have errors either of omission, I mean good businesses which you have missed, or errors of commission. So I think that's more sort of stock sort of related. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. So, just the last question, Nilesh. Any good book recommendations for us? Any good book which would help us become better investors?
Yeah, so uh, uh, I mean, starting point would be any book on Mr. Warren Buffett. I mean, there are some very simple book, the Warren Buffett Way by Robert Heckstrom. I mean, that should be the starting point. I would, in my sort of view, and those who are into equities or equity investment, I think I would sort of recommend a book called Common Stocks and Uncommon Profits by Phil Fisher. I mean, it's quite simple and sort of it sort of instill the rigor of research, and I think the book worth is sort of borne by the fact that it was actually published in 1958, and most of the thoughts are still so valid. So those who are interested in equity stock picking, I would say that's a good book to sort of read. Yeah.
Sure, great. Thank you so much, Nilesh, for your time. And we had a great time conversing with you. And I'm sure our viewers had a good time listening to you. So thank you so much for all the time. Thank you. Take care.
Thanks for inviting me. Thank you very much.
Wow, what a wonderful and engaging conversation that was with Mr. Surana. I hope आप सबको ये एपिसोड बहुत अच्छा लगा हो, and I'm sure you guys are waiting for the next one. So quickly जो भी हमने points discuss किए थे वो मैं आपके लिए summarize कर देती हूँ. तो सबसे पहले हमने ये डिस्कस किया था कि मीडियम टर्म में इकोनॉमी कैसा करेगा. सो मिस्टर सुराना सेज कि अगर देखा जाए तो ग्लोबली इन्फ्लेशन जो है वो पीक हो रहा है, और ये भी एक्सपेक्टेशन है कि यूएस फेड जो है अब इंटरेस्ट रेट हाइक्स को पॉज कर देगा. अगर हम इंडियन सिनारियो में भी बात करें तो इंडिया में जो इन्फ्लेशन अब कम हो रहा है बिकॉज ऑफ द फॉल इन कमोडिटी प्राइसेस. तो अगर देखा जाए तो वर्स्ट ऑफ इन्फ्लेशन इज ओवर और अब कोई इंटरेस्ट रेट हाइक एक्सपेक्टेड नहीं है. फिर हमने ये भी डिस्कस किया कि पिछले 3 या 4 सालों में इंडिया ने काफ़ी सुपीरियर रिटर्न्स दिए हैं कंपेयर टू अदर इमर्जिंग मार्केट्स, लेकिन अभी जो है इमर्जिंग मार्केट्स आर कैचिंग अप. तो मिस्टर सुराना सेज कि पिछले 1 साल में एफआईआईज ने इंडियन मार्केट से एग्जिट 2 रीजंस की वजह से किया था. वन वॉज ऑफकोर्स क्योंकि यूएस जो इंटरेस्ट रेट्स बढ़ा रहा था, एंड द सेकेंड रीजन वॉज कि इंडियन मार्केट्स जो थे थोड़े एक्सपेंसिव थे कंपेयर टू अदर इमर्जिंग मार्केट्स. लेकिन अब अगर इमर्जिंग मार्केट्स रिवाइव होते हैं तो सारे इमर्जिंग मार्केट्स में पैसा आएगा. फिर हमने ये भी डिस्कस किया कि अब क्योंकि इंटरेस्ट रेट्स बढ़ रहे हैं तो जो है बैंक एफडी के रेट्स भी बढ़ रहे हैं, जिसकी वजह से बैंक एफडीज अब काफ़ी अट्रैक्टिव हो गई हैं। तो क्या इसका मतलब ये है कि लोग अपनी एसआईपीज को डिसकंटिन्यू करके बैंक एफडीज में पैसा डालेंगे? तो मिस्टर सुराना सेज कि ये ज़रूर है कि बैंक एफडीज अब ज़्यादा अट्रैक्टिव हो रही हैं, लेकिन इसका मतलब ये नहीं है कि लोग इक्विटी इन्वेस्टमेंट्स में से अपना पैसा निकाल लेंगे। आइडियली आपको अपनी एसआईपीज कंटिन्यू करनी चाहिए टू गेट बेटर रिस्क एडजस्टेड रिटर्न्स डिस्पाइट द वॉलिटिलिटी। फिर हमने ये भी डिस्कस किया कि लोग जो एसआईपीज में इसलिए इन्वेस्ट करते हैं क्योंकि उनको रुपी कॉस्ट एवरेजिंग का बेनिफिट मिलता है, एंड ऑफ कोर्स दैट हेल्प्स स्पेशली ड्यूरिंग मार्केट करेक्शंस फॉर लॉन्ग टर्म वेल्थ क्रिएशन। लेकिन जब मार्केट्स ऊपर जाती हैं तो काफ़ी लोगों को लगता है कि उनको अपनी एसआईपीज डिसकंटिन्यू कर देनी चाहिए, जिससे कि जब मार्केट्स गिरे तब वो इन्वेस्ट करके दे कैन मेक यूज ऑफ द मार्केट टाइमिंग। तो मिस्टर सुराना सेज कि इसका मतलब ये है कि हम मार्केट को टाइम करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं। आइडियली जो फर्स्ट टाइम इन्वेस्टर्स होते हैं उनको ऐसा नहीं करना चाहिए, और जो सोफिस्टिकेटेड इन्वेस्टर्स होते हैं वो भी अगर मार्केट को टाइम करते हैं तो उनको हमेशा दे डोंट गेट इट राइट। एक या दो बार दे माइट गेट इट राइट, लेकिन हमेशा उनको भी मार्केट टाइमिंग का बेनिफिट नहीं मिलता है। फिर हमने ईएलएसएस फंड्स के बारे में बात की, द फैक्ट कि काफ़ी लोग जो होते हैं वो ईएलएसएस फंड्स में लास्ट मिनट इन्वेस्ट करते हैं फॉर टैक्स सेविंग पर्पस। लेकिन अभी जो नया यूनियन बजट है उसका फोकस जो है दैट्स मोर टुवर्ड्स द न्यू इनकम टैक्स रेजिम, जिसकी वजह से शायद लोगों का इंटरेस्ट ईएलएसएस फंड्स में कम हो सकता है। तो मिस्टर सुराना सेज कि फर्स्टली जो अभी भी ऐसे इन्वेस्टर्स हैं जो ओल्ड टैक्स रेजिम को फॉलो करेंगे, उनको अभी भी वो एटीसी डिडक्शन मिलेगा इफ दे इन्वेस्ट इन ईएलएसएस फंड्स। And he also says कि ELSS funds is comparable to any other diversified equity fund जिसमें आप wealth create कर सकते हैं अगर आप long term के लिए invested हैं तो। Then we also spoke about the fact कि जो काफ़ी लोग होते हैं वो उनको NFOs में invest करना अच्छा लगता है because they believe कि NFOs they are less expensive compared to existing funds। तो मिस्टर सुराना सेज कि अगर NFOs में आप इन्वेस्ट कर रहे हैं तो प्राइस एडवांटेज कुछ नहीं है कंपेयर टू एग्जिस्टिंग म्यूचुअल फंड स्कीम्स। और जब हम एनएफओ में इन्वेस्ट करते हैं तो या तो आप प्रोडक्ट देख रहे हैं, या फिर आप फंड मैनेजर देख रहे हैं, या फिर आप कोई एक गैप फिल करने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं इन योर एग्जिस्टिंग पोर्टफोलियो। लेकिन आइडियली जो फर्स्ट टाइम इन्वेस्टर्स होते हैं उनको एनएफओज में इन्वेस्ट नहीं करना चाहिए क्योंकि एनएफओज का कोई ट्रैक रिकॉर्ड नहीं होता है। फिर हमने मिस्टर सुराना से उनकी कुछ लर्निंग्स के बारे में पूछा इन द इक्विटी मार्केट, एंड ही सेज कि एक वेल मैनेज्ड जो पोर्टफोलियो होता है that can give you superior returns and good returns in the long term। Volatility को अपना दोस्त बनाइए क्योंकि इसमें आपको opportunity मिलती है to invest at lower market levels। He also says कि a well diversified and a well constructed portfolio has the potential to give superior risk adjusted returns over time। फिर हमने मिस्टर सुराना से कुछ बुक recommendations मांगे, and he says कि आप मिस्टर वॉरेन बुफे से लिखी हुई कोई भी बुक पढ़ सकते हैं, और अगर आपको स्टॉक पिकिंग में इंटरेस्ट है then you could read the book Common Stock and Uncommon Profits by Philip A. Fisher। So I hope ये session, ये program आप सबको अच्छा लगा हो, and I hope you guys are eagerly waiting for the next episode जिसमें हम एक और renowned speaker को लेके आएंगे। So till then, keep watching, like this video, share it with everyone, and please do subscribe to the Groww Mutual Fund channel, and thank you so much for watching।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.